My name is Erica and today I'm going to be telling you about some book series that I do not plan on finishing. I've realized there are a lot of series that I've never finished, and I went back through my Goodreads account and honestly just went through every single book that I've read and any series that I started and never finished. I do have another video planned that I'm going to talk about series that I do want to finish eventually. This one's mostly going to be me talking about book series that I probably will not finish. These are book series that I read the first book and I just wasn't a fan of and probably did not feel like continuing on. Honestly, it's been years since I've read some of these, so I'm not entirely sure why I didn't like them. A lot of times I did not leave a review, which is annoying. Most of them I can remember why I didn't want to keep going. And yeah, so let's just get right into it. The first series that I probably will never continue reading is The Lies of Locke Lamora, which is by Scott Lynch. Honestly, when I was rereading this description, I realized that maybe I could give it another chance, but probably not. I think it might only be like 2 books anyway, but my friend recommended this series to me. This is an adult high fantasy series. We're following the character of Locke Lamora, who was an orphan. He lives in this like island city. He has grown up not having anything, and then he decides to become a thief. He is trained under this accomplished con artist. Over the years, Locke becomes the leader of this group called the Gentlemen Bastards, and they are this notorious like thieving group. Obviously, being the leader of this group, there is a coup, and he has to face these difficulties and challenges and take down his enemy. Rereading this, I actually kind of was like, I really want to give it another chance. It reminds me of an adult version of Six of Crows, like we have Kaz Brecker and the Dregs and the Crow Club and everything, and it just kind of reminded me of that. So I feel like if you really like Six of Crows as a YA fantasy, this would be a good lead-in for an adult fantasy. I didn't really like this book. I feel like maybe it was just a little slow for me, because that's kind of why sometimes I have a hard time getting into it. I also maybe didn't like the main character. I didn't leave any notes as to why I didn't like this series and why I didn't want to continue on reading, but I just remember not really being a huge fan. And I've seen a lot of people actually talking about it more recently, so I feel like I could give it another chance, but I probably won't. Again, I think it's just a duology, so it's not that much, but it is kind of a long book for someone who did not really like it in the first place. I'm trusting past Erica that she didn't like it for a reason, so I don't want to go back and read it, but it does actually sound like a decent series. Alright, moving on. The next series that I will not continue reading is the Shadowfell series, and this was written by Juliette Muriller. I don't know if that's how you say the last name. This book I gave 2 out of 5 stars, and I remember really not liking it. I think I picked it up because I didn't know what else to read. I can't really remember why I picked it up. This series follows a 16-year-old girl named Naren. She's in this world called Alban. In this world, magic is not really allowed. Anyone who has magic or shows like signs that they have magic must be brought to the king. In order to escape this, Naren has had to pretty much hide who she is, and she is actually able to talk to these fairy people called the Good Folk. So in this book, she journeys to this place called Shadowfell, where a rebellion group is forming to take over the king. The Good Folk then set up these tests for her that she must pass in order to prove herself to these people, these fairies, and over time she faces like challenges. She meets this guy named Flynn who ends up rescuing her and all of this stuff, blah blah blah. I don't really know. I remember not really liking this book because I felt like it was really underdeveloped, and I was not a fan of like their magic. I didn't like her magic specifically, talking to the Good Folk, like the fairies. I just don't think I liked the Good Folk. That's what I got out of the short reviews that I wrote. I just wasn't a fan of the characters, and I felt like the story was very slow, and I felt like it was very repetitive because Naren like meets Flint, and then she like separates from him, then meets him again, and it's like going back and forth between her like wanting to be with Flint and not wanting to be with Flint, and like her trying to like find her path. I just felt like the plot wasn't that developed and the characters could have been written a little stronger, and I just again wasn't a fan of her magic and talking to the Good Folk. I just don't think I was a fan of that, but that is why I did not continue with the series, I believe. It's been a long time since I've tried picking it up. Alright, the next series, well, it's a duology that I will not continue reading is Zenith, which is the Andromeda saga by Sasha Alsberg and Lindsay Cummings. I have a lot of reasons as to why I didn't like this book, but Zenith follows this girl named Andromeda. She is known as the Bloody Baroness. And on their journey, they end up having to seek help from a bounty hunter from Andy's past. And there's also this like high ruler person who's out to get them. I don't really remember. There were a lot of things I did not like about this series. I did not like the writing style. I felt like it was very mediocre, and I did not like the pacing. It was like every other page was a new chapter, which worked sometimes, but I just felt like they were just trying to break it up really quickly, which did not really work for me. Again, I hated the writing, I hated the descriptions, everything was terrible. All of the voices of the characters sounded exactly the same, and I feel like they stole a lot of ideas from other book series. It was basically like the space version of Throne of Glass, but even more obnoxious. And I just felt like all the characters didn't really have a distinct voice, and Lyra was basically an exact copy of Liara from the Mass Effect series. There are a lot of things I did not like about this series, but it's only a duology, so I definitely will not continue reading that. And yeah, I was just not a huge fan of this, but there's a lot more I could say, but that's about it. In that book, I gave 1 out of 5 stars and wanted to give it less than that, but I couldn't. The next series that I started and did not continue reading was These Broken Stars by Amie Kaufman and Megan Spooner. In this book, we are on this ship called the Icarus, and it ends up crashing and being destroyed and sending these people onto this unknown planet. We're following the characters of Lilac and Tarver, who end up having to work together to survive on this unknown planet. The terrain is very dangerous and they must seek help. I honestly do not remember anything about this series. I didn't even remember the characters' names or why I didn't like it, so clearly it did not leave an impression. I feel like I remember expecting it to be a little bit different, and I just don't think I was a fan of the writing or the characters. I really don't remember anything about it, but I will not continue reading it. I'm not sure how many books are in this series now. I think maybe 3, maybe only 2. Maybe more than that, who knows, but that is another series I do not plan on continuing with. Another series that I started and did not finish was the Magisterium series, which the first book is The Iron Trial. This series is by Cassandra Clare and Holly Black. This book I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I remember reading it on my Kindle, but I do not remember anything about what I thought about this series. But this book follows this kid named Call, it's spelled like Call. He was warned by his dad that he was not allowed to have anything to do with magic, but he ends up being really good at it, and he has to face this iron trial to end up getting to this school called the Magisterium that is very well known. He ends up being a very powerful magician, I guess. I have no idea why I didn't like this book and why I didn't continue on. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, so I must have liked some aspects of it. I think that middle grade just isn't really for me. I'm just not a fan of them. I have a really hard time getting into them. I think I like deeper connections and understanding of the characters and just that type of stuff. I just feel like middle grade is very surface level, and I just wasn't a huge fan. Okay, the next series that I started and did not want to finish is Sleeping Giants. This is the Themis Files. It's written by Sylvain Neuvel. I don't think I spelled this name right. Neuvel? I have no idea what I wrote, but it's not looking clear, but I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. In this book, we are following this girl named Rose, who is a trained physicist. When she was little, she ended up falling and getting lost, and when they found her, she was being held by this giant metal hand, and they have no idea what this technology was. So 17 years later, she's a trained physicist, and she is determined to figure out what is going on and what this technology is. She wants to crack the code of this hand before someone takes it and uses it for something bad, the power that it might contain. That's what I kind of got out of it. I remember not liking this book because I felt like it was really slow. I don't think I liked the writing style. I think it's a really good sci-fi if you liked Illuminate Files and you're trying to find an adult version of that. That's kind of what I remember. It was very slow for me and I just wasn't really a huge fan, so I never continued on. I remember hearing a lot of amazing things about the series and that it was just really well done, but I just felt so bored and confused and just not interested in it as I was reading it. Alright, the next series that I remember kind of enjoying was Otherworld by Jason Segal and Kirsten Miller. This book I ended up giving 3 out of 5 stars. This book follows this kid named Simon who gets caught up in this virtual reality game called Otherworld. It's kind of Ready Player One aspect and those other Warcross, that type of thing, just that virtual reality. Simon gets thrust into this video game world and these challenges that he has to face. I don't remember really anything about it. I didn't even get that much from the description. I remember not liking it because I hated Simon as a character. I felt like he was just such a jerk, and he was just really rude and like arrogant and like cocky. I really did not like him as a character, and if I don't like the main character, then I just really don't like the book. I also just felt like the world was underdeveloped for some reason. I remember, maybe not, maybe I just wasn't really into it, but I liked the concept of it. Of course, I really like well done stories with virtual reality games and like that life, mostly because I remember the fourth Pendragon book was that type of thing, and I just loved that so much. And I really did like Ready Player One, but yeah, I was not a fan of this character, and just I felt like the plot and story could have been developed more. There's this character named Busara that was really cool, and I really wanted to read the next one, mostly just because of her. I think I liked more of the side characters than the main character, and I just felt like overall it was a little confusing. Okay, this next one I have a lot of opinions on, and that is Paper Princess, which is from the Royal series by Aaron Watt. This book I wanted to give like negative 40 million stars out of 5. I hated it. My sister told me I wasn't gonna like it, and I should have just trusted her because I hated this book. We're following this girl named Ella Harper, whose mom has kind of made her move around a lot. She just never really felt like she belonged anywhere. And then her mom ends up passing away and has left her with literally nothing. She gets taken in by this guy named Callum Royal. Of course, his last name is Royal. He's very rich, and he has like 3 other sons, I think, or more than that. There's like a whole family of boys. And Ella gets brought into their house in this nice mansion and everything. She has to adjust to this new life of wealth and deception and these creepy men who are like hitting on her at every angle. It's honestly super messed up. Like, they are now kind of siblings, and these guys are all over her. They're so mean, they're disgusting. Just the comments they make and everything that happens in this book, I was absolutely disgusted by. I hated it. I just will never ever pick up that book again unless I'm gonna trash it some more. It was just terrible to me. Like, I hated the characters, I hated the concept of it, I hated the men, like, ugh. It was horrible. I hated it. Never again. The next series is Reign the Earth, which is the Elemente series by A.C. Gauguin. This book I actually gave 2 out of 5 stars, and I feel really bad because when I was rereading the description, I was like, I feel like this could have been really good. I just personally must not have been in the right mindset for it, or something like that. I don't really remember. This book follows a girl named Shalia, who is kind of considered like the daughter of the desert. Her and this other Laini kingdom have been at war with each other for a very long time, and it's caused a lot of pain and hate between everybody. It's like this big rift between everyone. Her and her people are very desperate for peace, and Shalia will do whatever it takes to bring peace and safety to her people and her family. Through an arranged marriage, she ends up becoming Queen of the Bonelands. Her husband, Calix, wants to destroy the Elemente, and Shalia is an Elemente. These are people who can control the elements. It's their magic that is not really allowed, and she's been having to hide this for all these years and has never really felt safe as who she is. Meanwhile, she is falling for her husband's brother, and that is just spiraling into another issue for her. So she must choose between her safety and her future, or the future and safety of her people. When I look back at my review, I saw that I said that I was like kind of confused by the objective, and so like reading the description you get more of a stronger idea of that, but I don't think it was executed as well in the storyline and like the plot. I'm big on like characters and their objectives and what they're supposed to be doing in the story, and I just felt like it was kind of all over the place. I really like the concept of the magic and the elements because I love like Avatar: The Last Airbender and all of that, but I feel like it was kind of underdeveloped. I'm sure in the next book, if I continued on, it would be a lot stronger and I'd have a better understanding for everything. But I remember also really enjoying more of the side characters. I was not a fan of the romance and like the whole like love triangle. Not really a love triangle because she didn't really like her husband, but I just was not really a huge fan of her character, but I really liked a lot of the side characters. I did like that it was very dark and it's an emotional journey, and I feel like I kind of want to give it another chance. Part of me feels like I wasn't at the best place like while reading it. Sometimes I start books and I'm just not really in a good mindset to be focused on that book, or I have a hard time getting into it, so maybe over time I could give it another chance. I'm not even sure how many books are in this series, but we'll see if I end up doing it. Probably not. Alright, so the next series is Unearthed by Amie Kaufman and Megan Spooner. They wrote These Broken Stars, and this is another series they wrote together, and I just don't think I'm a fan of their writing because I've never really liked any of these books. This book I gave 3 out of 5 stars. So over time, Earth finally intercepts this message from this like unknown alien species that they've been like waiting for. So this species is called the Undying, and they have the technology to basically like heal a planet from any natural disasters or like environmental problems that they're having. So their former planet, which is called Gaia, has so much potential and they want to be able to go on that planet. We have this like scientist, like this researcher or somebody named Jules, and then we have a scavenger named Amelia. Jules and Amelia end up having to team up together and get into this undying temple to stop other people from using its power first or something. I don't really remember. I don't honestly remember why I didn't like this book. I can kind of remember that I didn't like the characters and just like the storyline was really blah. I remember I couldn't visualize things very well. Like I had no idea what was going on most of the time. Again, maybe it's just me not being focused while I was reading it, but if I'm not interested in something, that's usually why I'm not really focused on it and like my mind is wandering. But yeah, I was not a huge fan of it. I just don't know if I like their writing and like their characters, and it kind of reminds me again of like their other series that they wrote. Okay, the next series is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This book I actually kind of enjoyed, I remember, but not really enough to want to keep going. So this is a young adult thriller, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It takes place at Ellingham Academy, which is this really nice private school, really well known for like artists and inventors and just people with great like minds. At the beginning, once it opened, the founder's wife and daughter were kidnapped, and this person called Truly Devious, that's how they would sign their letters, they would leave like these horrible threats and these gruesome details of like murder and death and everything. So all these years have gone by, it's never been solved, it's been like always really unknown to all these people. And now we have Stevie Bell, who is going to be attending her first year at this private school, and she's determined to solve this mystery of Truly Devious. And while she's there, the Truly Devious name comes back and she is sucked into this mystery and trying to solve this case. And I don't really remember that many details about why I didn't like it. I know I have a hard time reading YA thrillers because it takes a lot for me to get into them, and I don't want to be able to know what's going to happen. But I could possibly try reading it again, but it's not something I plan anytime soon on picking back up, and I'd have to reread the first one to read the next one. So yeah, I don't believe I'll ever get back into it. I know my sister got into this series, she's the one who told me about it, but yeah, I'm not sure if I'll ever really continue on reading it. Alright, and our next series is All Rights Reserved by Gregory Scott Kessler. This book I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I really liked the concept of it, but I remember just not feeling interested in picking up the second book. So there's only 2 books in this series. We're following this girl named Speth. Her name is Speth because it takes place in this world where every word you use, everything you say, it costs money. And her family has never had a lot of money, and all the other names were taken, and so they only had these really weird names left. So her name is Speth. On her 15th birthday, she must give this last day speech to a bunch of people in her city, and once she turns 15, that's when her words are going to start costing her. She decides to kind of rebel against this concept and wants to remain silent. This basically throws off everything their society has ever known, and it threatens to destroy her and her family and just everything that's come to be known in this world that she's living in. I remember I loved the concept of this. I just remember it not being executed quite as I had anticipated. I think I thought differently of the storyline and what was going to happen, and I just don't think it lived up to my expectations. So I never wanted to continue reading it, but that's all I pretty much remember about it. The next series is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This book I gave 2 out of 5 stars. We're following this girl named Karu, who is an artist. She loves drawing monsters that may or may not exist, and she ends up like working for this person in this like mysterious shop and running these errands, and she's just always all over the place. She doesn't really know who she is or how she came to be. Her hair is like blue, this is just natural color. She has no idea really about her past or anything like that until she meets this guy named Akira, I think I put it as Akiva. This guy ends up revealing a lot about her past and information she may or may not have actually wanted to know. I don't really remember too much about this series. I just know I didn't like the concept of it, and I thought it was really boring. It's an enemies to lovers romance trope, and I hated it so much. I just remember hating it, and I just was not a huge fan of it, and it was just not really what I was expecting. I'd only heard good things about this series, and I just was not a huge fan of it at all. Another similar one that I ended up reading right after was Defy by Sarah B. Larson. This one is kind of like a Mulan retelling, sort of, but not really that good. We're following this girl named Alexa, who is actually currently being Alex. She is pretending to be a man so that she can fight in the king's army, and she is really high rank, like she's like one of the most like elite soldiers. But then one night the palace is broken into, and she and like 2 others are kidnapped and taken to this jungle into the wild and everything, and she has to like try to survive while not revealing who she is. They end up finding out who she is, and then there's like this whole love triangle going on. It's another enemies to lovers romance. I hated this book. I didn't hate it. Like, I think I gave like 2 out of 5 stars. I just was not a huge fan of the trope. I just was really bored and I didn't really care about the characters at all, so that's pretty much why I didn't want to continue reading it. Okay, second to last series that I'm going to be talking about is Aurora Rising by Kristoff and Amie Kaufman. So many Amie Kaufman books that I do not like. So, I really liked Illuminae by these authors, but I was not a huge fan of Aurora Rising. So we're following these students in this place called Aurora Academy. They are about to graduate and be assigned to their first big mission. So we have Tyler. He is so determined to have like the best squad and like this great team and go on these really cool missions. He ends up getting placed with like a bunch of people, like newbies and stuff that he doesn't like, or these people that just are kind of like misfits and he's not really a fan of them. They end up rescuing this girl named Aurora, who is kind of like named after the academy. So she was stuck in cryosleep for like 200 years. She has potential to be this catalyst that could like potentially start this war that's been brewing for all these years, and I don't really remember anything about it. I know I didn't like the romance. I felt like the romance went really quickly and it just was unnecessary in this book. I didn't like Tyler as a character. I just really had a hard time getting into it. I wasn't really a fan of any of the characters in this, and yeah, I wasn't like the romance I remember really annoyed me. So those are really the only things I remember as to why I didn't want to keep reading it. My sister really enjoys it. I know the newest book I think just came out or something, but I just was not a huge fan, so yeah, we'll not be continuing with that. Okay, last but not least is Dune by Frank Herbert. This is such a popular like fantasy sci-fi series that so many people are talking about right now because of the new movie coming out. I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars, mainly too because, I mean, I know it's really well known and it's like a very popular, iconic series for a lot of people, but I hated it so much. It took me forever to get through. And I feel like I wasted so much of my life reading this huge book, but I just did not like it at all. So in this book, we're on this desert planet called Arrakis or Arrakis. I don't know. Someone yelled at me for how I pronounced it. I'm saying Arrakis because it sounds cooler. We have this kid named Paul Atreides. He's in this like ruling line and ends up having to rule this planet. He has to rule this inhospitable planet whose only purpose basically is this drug that they call like spice. It's desperately wanted throughout the galaxy, and it extends life and like enhances consciousness. So it's this really important drug to a lot of people. Yeah, his family is betrayed and he has to set out on this journey to become this like kind of like this prophet basically who will like help humans achieve their dream. It's called like the Muad'Dib or something. I don't really know how to pronounce anything. Yeah, I was not a fan of this book. It was so slow. I didn't know what was happening most of the time. It was very hard for me to visualize, and I didn't like the characters and the concept. I just didn't like this book. So that is another series I will not continue reading. Apparently you don't really have to read the rest of the series to really like know what's going on, but yeah, I know there's a lot of books. And I'm honestly proud of myself for even pushing through the first one. Alright everybody, those are all the series currently that I do not plan on finishing. Like I said, I went through my Goodreads and just kind of looked at all the books I've read, and there are probably more that I haven't continued reading and will not continue to read. But that is it for now. That is all I have for you today. If you like this video, be sure to give it a nice little thumbs up. If you want to keep following me on this booktube journey, please subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at EricaAGobble. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you soon with another video. Bye!